Hey guys, what's going on? This is Kyle at ProjectionHub. Today's video, I'm going to be answering as many questions as I can within a reasonable time frame that come directly from people like you. So YouTube comments, social DMs, emails, people just reaching out and asking questions, various questions that deal specifically around business plans and even more specifically like business plans as it pertains to applying for an SBA loan. So if you're planning to start a business, buy a business, grow a business, and a business plan is kind of on your path, these come from questions from everyday people that are in the same exact position, and they're asking very specific questions as it pertains to that. So as I mentioned, my name is Kyle. I lead the business plan services at ProjectionHub, and I was formerly an SBA lender for about 7 years. And so I'm just going to answer those questions based upon kind of my experience and my background. This video is not a sales pitch. It's just to give some input and some details to these questions. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. First question is, I'm looking to buy a business that's already been around for 10 plus years and it makes money. Do I still need to do a full business plan? If the tax returns and financial statements already show it's profitable, it feels redundant and unnecessary. That is a good one. So short answer is yes, you're likely going to need to write a quote unquote full business plan. I know it probably feels redundant and unnecessary, but the purpose of the business plan, why an SBA lender would be asking for your business plan in that case is not for them the business plan shouldn't be telling them what the business does. They can probably go out and find that out for themselves. Like if you're writing a startup business plan, a big portion of that business plan is telling the lender about what the business even does, how the business operates, all those things you're going to do. Big components of an acquisition business plan, we need to, talk about what the business does, but there's a bigger focus on talking about why you're the right person to be buying that business, what works in the business already, what doesn't work, and how you're going to change it. How will the business seamlessly transition from current ownership to new ownership? And what do those steps look like in between? Will a seller still be involved and in what capacity? Of course, the financial projections will be weaved into there. So the business plan kind of serves as like the one-stop shop, the centralized hub for all of those different details and put into a nice package. So again, the business plan isn't as much for an acquisition about like telling them what the business does. It's all those other ancillary things that I just mentioned about how that transition is successful and why you're the right person to do it. So although the tax returns, if they're profitable, that's fantastic and can tell a very important story that will be incorporated into the business plan. There's other details there. Now, are there lenders out there who may not require like the formal business plan document and they say like, well, just get me a resume, get me the financials, get me a summary of the transition, get me a breakdown of the deal, and it's all these different documents? That's possible, but in my experience, most people would want that in a nice kind of tidy business plan. Second question, can't I just use ChatGPT or download a free template online and then swap out the names? Does the SBA have a specific format they require, or can I just use whatever? Yeah, totally valid question. And actually, if you went and explored in our YouTube channel, you would find a number of videos where I've recorded and said like how to use ChatGPT or any AI tool to write a business plan. So you can definitely do that. I mean, if you're out there doing your business plan, I would recommend using those things. My advice, however, is there is a right way to use those tools. So, those tools are only as good as the information you're providing it and how much you're guiding it to get to the end destination. So think of it as like they're your professional writer, but you need to be very clear in telling them about what they should be writing, and then you need to know what they wrote about. So definitely you can use those tools. I wouldn't recommend the downloading a free template and then just swapping out the names because there's going to be some challenges there. So it's the same reason like if you hired me to write your business plan, which you're welcome to do, if you never read that plan and then you just handed it to somebody, that's not good. You need to know what went into that plan, the details of the numbers, all of that stuff. So I would say buying or using someone else's plan and swapping out the names is probably the worst option. Second worst option would be just telling ChatGPT to write it and just make things up or just fill in the gaps. But the best option would be, and I have, maybe I can link the video below, is like how to use that. And it's inquires, putting a lot of notes into a document, gathering a bunch of information, asking ChatGPT to create an outline for the business plan for you, and then create a long list of questions for you that you need to answer in order to write an effective business plan. And then give it all of that information, and then have it step through the plan section by section, writing it. So that would be my advice to do that. An additional tip there is ChatGPT is great at writing a business plan. Okay. But if you're starting a business, if you're buying a business, if you're growing a business, there's multiple facets to that process. So there's not only just the formality of writing the business plan, there's also then having very realistic financial projections that are solid based in assumptions you understand that you've researched. And then assuming you need to get financing, like apply for an SBA loan, you need to also be catering to the lender, what they want to see, their debt service coverage ratio expectations, a lot of nuances there. So when you start to add together all these things that need to be cohesive, need to be saying the same thing, need to be supportive, that starts to make it challenging for ChatGPT just to do it all for you. So it can absolutely write a killer business plan, especially if you're feeding it the right way. Again, check out the video I made for doing that. But to make sure all these things are kind of working in harmony and synchrony, that takes a little bit more effort. Next question. So since you used to be a lender, what is the number one thing that made you throw a business plan in the trash? Like, is there a specific phrase or mistake I should be avoiding so I don't look bad or clueless? So when I was a lender, I never just took a business plan and threw it in the trash. I think that that's maybe like a Hollywood type thing that someone submits their worked on binder and then someone just takes it and throws it in the trash because they think they're a bad idea. But I can say there are some quick turnoffs and things that create some concerns. And so there's not like a specific phrase or a singular mistake that I would say to avoid. But I would say there's like 5 to 7, I'm going to pull up a list here, of key ingredients that I try to incorporate into every business plan I write. And when I'm reviewing other people's business plans, I try to make sure they are, accounted for. So first is going to be, you need to talk about yourself. So don't avoid talking about yourself, especially if you're a startup business, if you're buying a business, you are just as big of a factor of getting approved for the loan and making sure the plan makes sense as your business plan is. So your relevant background, how you know how to do this, why you're prepared to step into it and do this. So, relevant industry experience is what we call that. That's one. Realistic, reliable, believable financial projections. So, have solid debt service coverage ratio. The numbers are all, in line with industry standards. Another one is proof of demand. So market analysis, not only saying hey, the industry is heading in the right direction, but also locally or your specific audience, is there some sort of proof that you can provide that demonstrates growing demand? Like, is there increase in specific search trends? Is people signing up for a pre-launch list, all that kind of stuff? Or sorry, that would be a better example of customer acquisition and traction, which is the next point. So more so than saying, hey, I'm going to have social media and a website, can you give some specific examples of things you're doing to build that initial traction audience? So whenever you launch, you have a higher chance of success. Detailed plan. So if you're going to have a physical location, talking about the location itself, showing pictures of a target location, inspiration inside, you want to kind of cast that vision for a lender. You don't want them to imagine what your place is going to look like or where it's going to be. You want to show them, even if you haven't signed a lease, you can just use a place as an example in your target area. And then the last thing, or probably not for the business plan, but probably your personal financial situation, your credit situation. So if that's not in order, if you have really terrible credit and some different things like that, those are going to be some contributing factors. So yeah, I also have other longer videos about that, but that's kind of the quick take on that. I know how much equipment costs, but I have no idea how much working capital to ask for. Do I explain that in the plan, or does the bank tell me how much of a cushion I get? That is a fantastic question, and one you should be able to arrive at through your financial projections. So let me just open up a set of financial projections here for a second. This is our food truck financial projection template. You can go check out our projection templates on our website. They're linked down in the description below. But these are awesome because it just helps you kind of step through and kind of fill in your numbers here. And then it's going to spit out all of the financial statements and the things your lenders are going to want to see. And now why that's important is it's going to help you determine how much working capital you need. So in this box right here, you can see we have this box here that says 5 months covered, which means 5 months of operating losses are covered. So we're meaning the business is going to be cash flow negative until around month 5. So if I go over to the monthly breakdown of our income statement here, you can see the first year. If we go down here to net income, so lose $10,000, lose $10,000, lose 9, lose 2. And then in the 5th month, we break even on like a monthly profitability. Now I could go over to our cash flow statement and it would tell a similar, kind of story, but cash flow statements are a little bit more difficult to read. So I like to use the income statement to show that. But that essentially is your working capital, is how much of that cushion do you need to operate? So when you're breaking down what to ask for, it's a combination of things. You want your tangible things, so like equipment you're buying, trucks you're buying, things that have a price tag, so you can line item those very easily. And then, you can see like what initial expenses are going to be for like the first month, so that you can kind of kick things off. So for the first month, we're going to need X amount in just expenses, and then covering those losses is probably the other big thing. So one bonus tip that I'll say though is it really turns lenders off when you say, hey, I need $100,000 in working capital, and some big chunk of that is going to be to like pay yourself so that you can transition out of a full-time job or something like that. So if you're the owner and you're planning on working in the business and you're leaving a full-time job or something like that, be prepared not to pay yourself, especially if you're getting a loan and you're asking for working capital. You should not be accounting that in working capital. Now, you could definitely have an employee if you need employees to make it work. Definitely reasonable to say, hey, I need to be able to cover the cost of these employees for 5 months until the business is cash flowing to be able to cover them. But you should not be taking a paycheck in that period, or at least you shouldn't be expecting to use a loan for that. So that's kind of a bonus tip. Okay, we'll leave it at that for today. So again, this could go on forever. I've got a very long list of questions, so I'll do some more of these videos if you guys like it. Feel free to drop a comment down below if you have a specific question as it pertains to a business plan or the SBA. If you think that question is too specific, so feel free to fire away. Feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're interested. If you have questions, or I should say, if you have an interest in working with us on your business plan, financial projections, or whatnot, you can check us out at ProjectionHub.com and see what we have to offer there. If not, we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for sticking around.